Hi, hello, how are you guys? Hope you are doing well. Welcome back to Unlock Jenkins Pipeline Secret series. In this series, today I want to explain one more very common regular user scenarios in our pipeline is how to clone the private repositories, how to clone the private repositories using SSH username with private key. Most of the times we clone the code as a public repositories, right? But in the real world, if you go to the organization, every organization have their own public private repositories. In generally, in GitHub, there is an organization. Under organization, they will create the repositories for various projects. That's where teams can access their repositories. So if it is a private repository, so if it is a private repository, how to clone the private repository using the declarative pipeline script. So for this, we have to follow. These are the steps we need to understand. The first step is first you need to change your public repository to the private repository. The first step is you need to change the public repository to the private repository. So first, how to change this public repository to the private repository. Then to connect from public repository to the private repository. If you take this diagram, right now, left hand side we have a Jenkins server, and right hand side there is a GitHub. You know very well our repositories are stored in the GitHub repository, GitHub side. And who are trying to clone the code from the repository via declarative pipeline. That declarative pipeline is written inside the Jenkins pipeline job. Then how the Jenkins is trying to connect to the GitHub using script. So for this, you should, especially private repositories, you should understand there is a technical mechanism called SSH keys. Through SSH keys, we are going to clone the repository. It means, as you know very well, you can clone the repository using HTTPS. You can also clone the repository using SSH. You can also clone the repository using GitHub CLI, right? These are the three ways to clone the code into your Jenkins or into your workspace. So right now my focus is how to clone the repository using SSH. SSH. So SSH is nothing but secure shell. Why you are using SSH? Because as you know, either you can clone the private repository using HTTPS, or whether you are going to clone the repository using SSH. GitHub is completely stopped recommending the using the username and passwords. So without username and passwords, how you are trying to clone the private repository, or how the Jenkins is trying to connect into the private repository for cloning purpose. For this, today we are trying to demonstrate the steps to clone the private repositories using automation script called declarative pipeline. For this, first you should understand how to change my public repository to the private repository. Then what is the importance of SSH keys to deal this scenario, and how the SSH keys works, and how to generate the SSH keys using SSH keygen command, and what are the different keys are generated when I fire the command SSH keygen at my Linux server, and how can I add these keys, like why we need a private keys and why we need a public key. This is called private key. ID underscore RSA is a private key, and ID underscore RSA dot pub is the public key. Then how to add the public key, and how to add the private key, and where to add the public key and where to add the private key, and how this public key and private keys are communicated in order to authenticate. Once authentication is done, how to store your credentials inside the Jenkins. Once the SSH credentials are stored, then how to use these credentials in the pipeline. So these are the steps we need to perform. So let's go the first step, implementation. So I want to connect to my repository. Right now, uh, this is my public repository, right? This is called my public repository. So to To change the public repository to the private repository, go to the settings, go to the settings, and just scroll down. So we have a option called, see, currently the repository is a public. So this is called change repository visibility option inside the danger zone. Danger zone. In the danger zone, the first option is change the repository. Just go and click on this button, change visibility from the public to private. Just click on change to private. Yes, I know how to do it, and I read this effects, and let me change my repository from public to private. So the first step gone. So what is the first step? We change the public repository to the private repositories. Again, I'm repeating, go to the settings, just scroll down. There is a change visibility button is there. Click on it. Okay, that's first step is over, right? This is the step one. Next, in order to deal this one, we need SSH keys. So SSH key, why we need SSH key? SSH in the sense secure shell, secure shell. So generally, SSH key is a kind of cryptography keys. Suppose if you want to connect from the local server to the remote server in the internet. If your servers are located in the remote site, for example, in this block diagram, my repository GitHub is in the remote site, I'm in my own local environment. So how can I securely connect from the local server to the remote server in order to secure my connection? How to establish my secure connection between the local to remote? How this secure connection will be established in the unsecure channel like internet? For this, we need SSH keys. We need SSH keys, right? So remember it, if you want to access remote computer over the network. And one more thing is SSH is a protocol. It's a protocol, you know very well. And this is running on the port number 22. So this SSH keys is especially useful for authenticate. So authenticate, guys. Authenticate users, and it's trying to establish the secure connection. All right. Okay. Then. So I need SSH key in order to communicate to my remote server to establish the secure connection. So instead of using the password based authentication, we are using SSH key based authentication. Again, I'm repeating, what is our intention? Our intention is I want to clone the private repository. So if you want to clone the private repositories, GitHub is completely restricted. Use the username and password. Without username and password, how can I clone my repository, either HTTP based or SSH based? Then they given a technique. So if you are using the SSH key, obviously what we are going to do, I'm trying to clone the repository using SSH connection, isn't it? Because as per my previous explanation, see, you can clone HTTPS, or you can clone using SSH, or you can clone using GitHub CLI. In this current demonstration, we are going to clone the code using SSH. For cloning the code using SSH protocol, we need a SSH key. Those SSH keys are used for establishing the secure connection between the local server to remote server. What is our local and remote server? My remote server is a repository. Repository is stored in the GitHub as a private repo. Who are going to access Jenkins? Then how the Jenkins is going to connect to the GitHub via secure channel? How this Jenkins and GitHub will exchange the keys, and while exchanging the keys, how the authentication is happen, how this authentication is injected inside the automation script, how this automation script is going to execute. Yes, this, for that we are going to explore the steps. The first step is we already done. So how to change the public repository to the private repository. Then we discuss the importance of SSH key. Now, what is the SSH key? To authenticate users and establish a secure connection in the unsecure in the internet. You can say, right? Okay. Now, how the SSH key works? How the SSH key works? In generally, SSH key is nothing but just like a key pair. Just like a key pair. It's a key pair. Whenever keys are generated, whenever SSH key is generated by the server, basically there are two keys will be there, guys. It means SSH key consists of two keys like private key, and public key. Private key and public key. So what is the use of public key and private key? So generally, private key, if you observe our diagram, private key must be securely kept inside the local environment in your machine. It means uh, if it is saved in the public, in the private machine, like in the own machine, and your public key is shared with the remote server. So it means, remember one thing, private key is in the local environment, public key must be inside the remote environment. So always remember it. So if there is a kind of public key and private key, here we need to understand how these two keys are communicated. For that, first of all, you should understand from the public key. So let us talk about the public key. What is a public key? So again, I'm repeating. Public key is always stored in the remote server, and private key is stored and saved at the local server. Here, local server in the sense our Jenkins. And remote server is nothing but here at the GitHub. In the current example, I'm not talking about the other servers. We are running the Jenkins as a service on the Linux server, and we have a repository at the GitHub. In the GitHub, we have public and private repositories. To communicate between Jenkins to the GitHub in a secure manner using SSH, I need a public key and private key. Always remember it. Actually, public key is just like a lock. So best example, how to unlock it, how to unlock. I need a key. That key is going to be stored in the form of private key in the local machine, so that your public key acts like a lock, and that can be opened with your corresponding private key only. So obviously, you lock your door. You went outside, and again we come back. If you want to unlock it, you need a key. That's why private key is essential in the local server, and using that key the public key will try to open it. That's why, even very well, if you want to connecting to uh, any EC2 instances through SSH command, SSH -i pem file at the rate of username and private DNS, public DNS, right? The same way here, to connect to the remote repository, especially private repositories, you need two keys. One is a public key and private key. Okay, now once you have public key and private key, authentication is absolutely done it. So how to generate this public key and private key? Yes, there is a command called as a SSH-keygen. Let us go and connect to our Jenkins and create the, yes, login as a root user, and I'm trying to go and check SSH, because as you know, I forgot to say, all our SSH keys are saved in this present working directory. Right now I'm in the root user. Under root user there is a hidden directory called as a .ssh. Under SSH I have files like authorized keys and id underscore rsa and id underscore rsa.pub. I think so these are the old keys. Let me remove those keys. id underscore rsa id underscore rsa.pu. Let me remove this. Okay, right now I don't have keys. I don't have keys. So let us go and create the SSH keys, right? For this, there is a command called SSH-keygen. SSH-keygen. I'm going to define a type of key called as RSA. So that's why what is a key, why we need SSH keys, and how to encrypt and how to decrypt. So those are very, very essential concepts in the CI/CD pipeline, as well as if you go for AWS administration side. And when I start the cloud demonstration, there I can explain how these keys are securely stored and how you maintain, how to validate, how to protect, and especially we'll talk about security concept. Okay. Now, right now, just go ahead. I'm going to define the type key as RSC, and -b is, as you know, cryptography. Cryptography in the sense we have to securely create the keys actually. The keys are generated using different types of algorithms, right? When I use algorithms, I need some keys actually. By default, some kind of keys are key range will be there, right? I think so 2048. That range of key is not so enough If you want to give more security, I'm just asking please generate these many number of keys X 4096 4096. Keep in mind. So uh, I'm going to define my email ID itengineers99 at gmail.com. So what I'm going to do here is I want to generate SSH keys using the SSH keygen command. Okay. Now just hit, just one more hit. That's why here our agenda is not demonstrating the SSH and how to create the SSH. I'm not deeply digging. Just I need a keys. Go and see ls. Go and see the id underscore rsa and pub in this present directory. Yes. So id underscore rsa is a private key and id underscore rsa dot pub. Okay. So the third step is yes. The first step is we change the public repository to the private repositories. Then we understood the importance of SSH key. Then we understood what exactly the key pair. In the key pair, how many keys are there? Public key and private key. The public key in the sense ID underscore RSA. And always remember this private key must be in the Jenkins and ID underscore RSA dot pub is in the GitHub file. Remember this point because we are connecting from Jenkins to the GitHub using SSH protocol. So for that, we are going to generate the SSH keys using keygen command. Okay, then how to add the public key to the GitHub? I already discussed. If you want to connect into the remote server will cross check you. Hey, do you have a proper key to unlock your connection? Yes. How? That's why remote server will always exchange the keys between your local machine to the remote machine. So how the remote machine is going to talk to the local machine, how the local machine is trying to help connect to the remote server. That's why public key must be in the GitHub and private key must be inside the Jenkins. So first you try to add the public key. So where is the public key? Go back to here. If I say ls, these are the two files, right? First I need a public file. So you try to display that public file. So copy the key file from starting to ending. Copy this. Then how to add the public key? Now go back to the user profile at the top right, and there is a settings button. Just go and click on. Sorry, it's a link. And if you scroll down, there is a left hand side the option called SSH and GPG keys. Go and click on SSH, and right now I'm going to add the SSH keys. Click on new SSH key. Suppose I'm giving right. Suppose GitHub repo key, or you can say yeah GitHub repo key. This is my title which I assign inside my GitHub. Okay, now just here you need to copy. So you need to copy and paste this entire key at text box which is available in the key. So this is the key text area. So I pasted my copied public key into this text box and click on add as such key. So I successfully add the public key which I generated at the Linux server into my GitHub. Next, if you're looking at the diagram, see I add the public key. But who are running the script to clone the code from the GitHub? Jenkins via declarative pipeline. So my declarative pipeline should also require some credentials authentication to access to the private repository for cloning. For that, you need to add private key inside the Jenkins. How can you do it? That's why I see the next step is store the SSH credentials inside the Jenkins. How to do it? Go back to our Jenkins. Right now I'm in the Jenkins homepage. Go and click on the manage Jenkins. So hope you understand what we are going to discuss. What is our plan is? We are going to clone the private repositories using SSH. Here SSH username with the private key is nothing but is an option inside the Jenkins. But as we discussed very clearly, we have three types of ways to clone the repository, either a public repository or private repository, right? One is HTTPS based, second one is SSH based, the third one is a GitHub CLI. Now what we are doing, we are going to clone the private repository, not public. In the earlier recorded session, we already cloned the public repositories. Even the public repository doesn't require the authentication, like because no restriction. But if it is a private repository, there is a restriction. What is the restriction? Username and passwords. But username and passwords are completely prohibited by the GitHub for our security. So how to do it without having username and passwords? That's called SSH. Okay, go back to our Jenkins. Now in the Jenkins, there is a credentials. In the credentials link, we need to add the global credentials as a type called as a username with the private key. This is username with the private key. Here, one more key question you may be get in your mind. Sir, what is the default username to connect to my GitHub from the Jenkins declarative pipeline? Keep in mind the default username is a Git. Git is the default user. Wait. So here I want to store my Jenkins credentials. So I want to store SSH credentials. How to store my SSH credentials? Go back. Here there is a global. Again, repeating credentials provider plugin. If it is not there, you cannot store your sensitive data. That's why if you observe the entire discussions, we are moving around its data, variable declaration only. Still we are in the variable declaration only. That's why my intention is not just explaining the information on the fly. You think properly. You think properly. Why this guy is going to explain these many examples in different ways? Because if you are in a corporate world, various organizations use various technical approaches. But one common approach is a pipeline only, declarative pipeline or scripted pipeline. The declarative pipeline or scripted pipeline, whether you use a grrovy or maximum you combine the grrovy with the declarative, right? In the declarative, how to develop the stages, each and every stage, what kind of tools were integrated, how these tools are initialized. It is not so simple steps. That's why I want to give a better examples to demonstrate differently. Hope you understand. Now I want to add the credentials. Go and click on add credentials. So what type of credentials we have to add here? Private key, because if you're looking at private key, so private key is must be always associated at the Jenkins side. So that's why always remember one point to understand the scenario is public key must be added in the GitHub, private key must be added inside the Jenkins UI or Jenkins credentials place, where see uh, see right now what type of kind you are using, not username with password, secret file, no, secret text, no. We need SSH username with the private key. Select this one. So here, what is your ID? Suppose I'm using GitHub hyphen SSH hyphen credentials. I'm giving right. This is the ID, which is very essential. You need to map in your automation script, guys. That's a don't. So this is the GitHub key which we created at the GitHub side, but this is the ID which we associated, which we given at the uh, Jenkins side, right? Now this is private repo. Just I'm giving a description. Now just scroll down. So username. Remember, a default username is a get because we are connecting to the remote repository. Remote repository is nothing but GitHub. So along with the username, what about private key? Yes, select this radio button and just click on add button. Now you will get the text area. Now you have to paste your private key. Where I get the private key? Now let me reconnect to my Jenkins server. I'm logged into my root user. I should go to the SSH folder. Now there is a file called as a id underscore rs. It's private key. So that's why private key must be keep inside the Jenkins. So bake file, carefully copy from the beginning to end. Beginning to end. Copy this. Go to the Jenkins server and paste. Now just click on create. Cool, right? So almost all the steps over. So what is the first step? If you want to clone the private repository using SSH, the first step is check whether repository is a public repository or private. If it is a public, try to change public to private. Then to establish a secure connection between the local to remote server to maintain the secure connection in order to establish and authenticate, we need SSH key. SSH key is nothing but a key pair. There are two types of key pair like public key and private key. How to generate the public key? Then using a command called as a SSH-keygen command. Then you will get the two keys. Then you need to store the public key at the GitHub side, and you need to store the private key at the Jenkins side, right? I think so. All the steps over. Now this is the time we need to build the automation scripts, right, in order to clone the private repositories. Go there, right? My credentials are saved. Now go to my dashboard. Now let us try to create a pipeline job. So I think so. Hope you are getting. So the point here is how SSH will help you to connect to the private repositories. So that's the reason we are trying to work on different techniques to clone the repositories. So earlier example, we clone the public repository using HTTPS. Now one more doubt you may get. So in organization we don't have a public repositories. In our organization, in our corporate culture, we have a private repositories only. How to clone the private repositories? For that we are here. So so clone private repo uh, using SSH, something like this is my job name. Just click on the pipeline. See, this is any conventional name. You please try to follow. Just to understanding purpose, I just given one of the job is clone private repo using SSH. So what we are doing now? So we set up everything. We have a public key and private key. Then we need a automation pipeline script in order to clone the code from repository. So as usual, you try to start the pipeline keyword and develop the environment directives and build the stages. Next, inside the stage, develop the scripts in order to call our private repository. Go back and here scroll down. Here inside the pipeline script, sorry, the pipeline window, pipeline is the keyword. Now as usual, I'm going to define agent any in order to run my scripts on available agent. Now environment directives, right here we are trying to use two variables, isn't it? One is repo underscore url. This is the value where you get, go to the repository, click on my user, and I have repositories. One of my repos is a CI/CD projects. So keep in mind we are not cloning the code from HTTPS using SSH. Click on the SSH, copy this URL link, go back to the Jenkins window. Sorry, go back to Jenkins here, and within the double quotes or single quote you paste. See, git at the rate of github.com :username/acd. That's we are not cloning using HTTPS. We are cloning through SSH. Okay. Now one more variable you know very well. The branch underscore name. My branch name is, for example, right now I'm working on the main branch or master branch. Next, all the stages, and you may call the stage. The stage name is a clone a private repo. Now, see, you may get one question, why I'm always defining the environment directory at the top of the stages, because if rest of the stages wants to access the same variable again, global variable. Instead of that, you copy, Control C, just delete, and inside the stage, you define the environment section. There is no issue at all. Under environment, you can define the script. You define the steps. Under the steps, if you want to access the environment variables, see here. So you can call the script. Okay, within the script, you can fire the command called what? The clone. So that's why that's your choice, right? That's why it is always advisable. It is always advisable to maintain the public variable at the global level. Okay. So just I'm going to paste here. But you may get one question here. In which scenarios we are going to declare a specific variable at the specific stage only. That's why we are going to perform so many series, and we are going to run we need to build a lot of automation scripts. There I can tell you. As of now, in the current example, you just remove this one, and I declare a public variables. It means global variables. Okay. So yeah, environment directives is closed, and stages, stage name, and the stage name we are open the script. The script, we are going to clone the repository using git dsl. Git, you know very well, in the previous recorded session we discussed git and checkout. So what are the various arguments required for the git dsl? One is a branch, right? Branch. Okay, branch we already have. So what is a branch here? Branch is a main that is pointing to one of the variable called as a branch name. So I want to access that value of the branch using the G string. So G string in the sense, yeah, double quotes, dollar, left braces, paste your variable and close the braces. Now, and you need a one more argument called as a what, comma, URL, right? URL is nothing but again same, try to replace the value of the variable. What is the value? This is the value. This pointing to which variable? Repo underscore URL. So place the repo underscore URL. Okay, but these two arguments are enough for the public repository, but we are going to clone the private repository, not public. For that, you need a one more key, guys. Keep this point. One more argument called as a uh, credentials ID. Keep this point. For this, we already created uh, one ID for the private keys, right? Where is that value? This is GitHub sh credentials. This is the ID we created inside the kind called username with private key, right? Copy this, go back, and you try to uh, keep in this single quote or double quotes. So now that's it. So why it is getting error? Check. Stage open, steps open, script is closed, steps closed, and there is a stage. Yeah, just copy and save it. So observe this code. So this is my global environment directives. Sorry, environment directives. There we declare the repo URL and branch name are the two different keys, two different variable. and within the script we are trying to clone it using git DSL statement. The two arguments, branch name, URL, but today for our scenario you need to pass one more attribute called credentials ID. That's why don't looking at the script, guys. It means that along with the script try to understand what I'm going to give the bullet points. So we discuss these are the key attributes, key elements essential for cloning the code from the GitHub repository if it is a private repository. Now go back and try to click on build now in order to run the script. Now, yes, now my build is successfully executed. It means that we cloned successfully. So hope you understand this topic. I hope it will help you. You please recap the steps and we'll stop this session. So what is our agenda today? Our agenda is I want to clone the private repositories using SSH. For this, you need a public key and a private key. In order to clone the code from the private repository using SSH, we have follow some steps. So we need a key, we need a SSH key for public and private key. And after creating the public key and private key using SSH key gen, we are trying to add the key at the GitHub as a public, and we are adding the key at the Jenkins as a private key with a kind call as username with the private key. Keep in mind. And in the DSL, in the Git DSL, arguments are branch and URL and credentials ID. Keep this point. Credentials ID. This is an argument. This is the new step, new argument you need to pass it. So in this way, we successfully cloned the private repositories. Hope you understand. And if you like it, please try to subscribe and share it and join into our Telegram channel called DevOps Dummies. And please encourage me. And see you in the next session with one more beautiful topic in our Unlock Jenkins Secret series. Until that, you just try to